It was a Tuesday afternoon, unlike any other. I was 16. I'd come home from school. I'd been thinking about this decision for a number of weeks. Slightly nervous as I entered inside. I could smell the chocolate chip cookies cooling on the counter. Mom was there preparing supper, which on any typical day might have looked like shepherd's pie, a Scottish, yet another variation of meat and potatoes. I said, Mom, I'm going to become a vegetarian. She stopped, she turned, looked at me and says, still going to eat this supper, aren't you? She was very kind, very compassionate, and it ended up turning into a bit of a coming-of-age speech. She was going through a divorce at the time, had a lot going on emotionally, and being Scottish, she knew nothing about being a vegetarian. She says, Malcolm, I support you, but I can't help you. And from that moment, I was on my own, making my decisions for myself about food. And up until that time, food was purely physical, right? Something I enjoyed doing, but the criteria of what I chose food was purely based upon what was quick, easy, and tasted good. So my diet and the extent of my culinary abilities looked like I knew how to make Pop-Tarts, grilled cheese, and microwave pizza. And this actually, in the beginning, had nothing to do with health. It was a reaction, an extension of myself as a young adolescent being faced with images of how humans were destroying the planet, torturing animals, and I just didn't want any part. I said, what can I do to help change this? And just like today, you can read the books, you can watch the documentaries. What do they all say? Eat less meat, become a vegetarian. So I did. Literally, overnight, I went from meat, potatoes, and junk food to just potatoes and junk food. And it did not go so well. I could barely make it through a day. I was having fainting spells, blood sugar issues, but I was committed, so committed. I was like, okay, obviously I've got to learn. And I just started putting one foot in front of the other, got into this idea of whole foods, and then the health picture came into view. So now food took on a more personal level, where I was beginning to realize, oh, there is a connection, there's a correlation between my health and what I put in my body. I went down this journey, this path. It wasn't easy, but I was committed because I was right. I was righteous. Started to blend my interests with yoga, meditation, my connection to nature, and bring about this idea, this mysticism of this like Garden of Eden reality, right? That we needed to come back to nature, to do less harm, to live a more peaceful life. And food was one way to do that. Food now had become political, right? They say you vote with your dollar, and no more powerful a vote than your food dollar. And I was on a mission to convert others. Anybody, maybe you've been this way in your life. Anybody know someone who is so passionate about something, they are convincing you? Right? I've been there. I was up on my high horse. I was up on my pulpit. Right? You're the problem. You're eating meat. You're killing yourself. You're killing the earth. What was so ironic was someone who claimed to be so compassionate was anything but. Very intense. I had sayings. I would wear t-shirts like milk is murder. You are what you eat, and I don't eat death. The thing is, that entire time, as confident as I was on the outside, I would argue with anyone. This is the way. I've read the books, see the studies. On the inside, I didn't feel well. Sure, I'd made some progress. I kept going down the rabbit holes, reading more books, trying new things, more cleansing. I just add in this, change that, right? It was vegetarian, then it was vegan, then it was raw vegan. But undeniably, throughout those more than 10 years, anytime I looked in the mirror, the reflection back was a pale face of which I did not see vitality. Stephen Herd Buhner, one of my favorite herbalists, he's got this saying he calls golden threads. Maybe you can relate. Where a golden thread shows up in your life and it just starts to kind of weave through, right? For me, it was listening to a podcast. And the interviewer then broaches the subject that the person being interviewed begins to tell their story, much similar to mine, that they had tried this vegetarian journey, didn't work, they had changed and come about. I even started to have dreams and psychedelic visions where animals would appear to me and say, "You need to eat me." It's pretty hard to argue with an electric blue bison coming out of the sky. But yet. So after a while of this kind of internal conflict, I couldn't deny it any longer. And I said, you know what? I'm just going to put away all my nutritional and environmental programming. I'm just going to put that aside. And I'm going to feel it. I'm going to experience it. This is going to be an experiment. And I was raw vegan at the time, so I still held on. I didn't put all the way of my dogma away. I was like, okay, it's got to be raw. It's got to be wild. So I took my wife, Laura. We went out for sushi. Sashimi. No rice, nothing. Just a big hunk of wild salmon. Several chunks. And I ate that first bite. And every single bite literally dissolved into my body. I felt instant energy, like I could swim upstream. I was like, woo, that feels so good. Other experiences I had, I ate raw liver, raw bison liver. I was high for 2 days. After eating that sushi, my wife and I left, and I'm literally walking out the door, and I was like, I gotta have some more. I'm like, Laura, we gotta go back in. She's like, no, we just paid. Like, we're on our way out. We can't just turn back in. So we drove to the next sushi restaurant. We sat down again. And what I learned through that experience, and maybe this is for you, sometimes what you need is less thinking and more feeling when it comes to food and nutrition. And I was faced with, how do I move forward? How do I make this transition? So putting all that dogma aside, following my gut more than nutrition trends, I started to look a little bit more objectively at diet and nutrition. And it turns out there are some universal principles of human nutrition. And if you've heard me speak before, I love to share what I call the natural food guide. So in fact, there are 4 food groups that every single culture around the world consumes foods from these 4 food groups. They're not the ones you learned in school. Those were not helpful. It's not the Canada Food Guide. It's what I call the natural food guide. Plants, animals, bacteria, and fungi. Every single culture consumes food from one of these kingdoms. And each of the kingdoms offers nutrients that the other can't. They're absolutely essential and foundational to human health. There's been no vegan culture at any time. There have been maybe sects within cultures where certain individuals, maybe for their lifetime, maybe for certain spiritual reasons, etc., that might take on a high plant-based diet. But to eat an exclusively plant diet is impossible. In fact, even to be a vegan farmer, I was a part of a community where we were vegan farmers. It's very difficult, and it actually ignores the interconnectedness of an ecosystem, right? Plants only grow with bacteria, with fungi, and with animal input. So no matter what diet you consume, here's the unavoidable truth about the foods you eat. In order for you to live, something must die. In order for you to live, someone must die. Be it a plant, an animal, a bacteria, or fungi. Life feeds on life. In order for you to live, something must die. I mean, I tried to escape it, go down that rabbit hole, right? Contemplating become a breatharian. Right? Well, I can't eat a nut, can I? Because that's a seed and that's more potential of life. What do I do? What do we do? It becomes accepting that reality and getting out of dogma, getting out of this illusion, and getting more into a heart-centered space. I mean, I'm a plant guy. I love mushrooms, I love bacteria, I love them all, but plants, like Alex, love the herbs, love the plants. But the irony was, here I was, I do no harm. Yet I was eating plants without even any thought. And now we know, science can prove, I've had my own experiences, plants, just like bacteria, fungi, and animals, they care for their young, they have communication, right? So moving forward becomes, I believe, less about what you eat, but how you honor the life that you're consuming. And I imagine, I don't know, I wasn't there, but I imagine that traditional cultures that were more connected to the land, to their food, and this is what I'm told, had more of a reverence for the food they consumed. I was on a flight last year out to the West Coast on WestJet. You read the magazine, and I came across this feature on Head Smashed in Buffalo Jump. And there was a native elder that was sharing, he says, when our people, when they used this place, and hundreds of bison died, it wasn't a celebration, it was an honoring of life. And they revered the bison, they revered the buffalo, because they knew in order for them to live, the buffalo must die. So now, food for me took on a much more deeply spiritual perspective, experience. And I'd been into yoga, right? I did my asanas, and I was spiritual, that kind of thing. And oftentimes, too, right, it's like omnipresent, omniscient, all these like high states we're trying to achieve. We're omnivores. We eat everything. This is the most spiritual of diets. And isn't it interesting, in order for you to live, if something must die, is that maybe why the word diet? I've also heard it is a Native American thought, conception, that it's an adult wisdom to know this, right? And when that realization hits you, we're all in this together, no one gets out alive, it changes the game. There's a different experience, a different reverence that we can and we should have for plants, animals, bacteria, and fungi. So my invitation is to you, is this not the point of life, right? To be more conscious, be more aware, and 3 meals a day, snacks in between, however often you eat, to have this opportunity to connect with yourself. Where it matters not so much is what you're eating, but how you're consuming it. The sacred communion of breaking bread, gluten-free, of course, with yourself and that which you are consuming. Because life goes so quick, doesn't it? Right? I got a daughter, she's 14, and when there's a parent, it's like kids, like they are your measure of like time passing, right? And we're going to hit this moment exactly like the moment we're in now, the exact same consciousness, but our body's just going to be a little bit older, a little bit more tired, and that's it. So we got to be present, we got to be conscious, and food is a delicious invitation to do that. Thank you.